guys, it's Elle and welcome back to the Little Bloom Library. So today I'm going to be talking about my rating system for books. But first things first, I did go to Barnes & Noble today. I was very, very good. I only got one book. And that book was Spear by Nicola Griffith. This is a queer Arthurian legend retelling that was actually recommended to me by my father, which is really sweet. So I'm going to be reading this one. It is super, super short. I kind of burnt myself out a little bit on my reading vlog from last time. So I think a book this short is going to be a perfect way to kind of ease myself back into reading rather than reading Ruthless Gods. But we'll see what happens. So before we get into today's video in full, I just want to say that this channel's videos are going to be uploaded every other Saturday. This is because I run a campaign for D&D on Sundays, every other Sunday. So making sure that I have a weekend to plan for my D&D campaign is very important. So going forward, it'll be an every other Saturday kind of deal. So on to how I rate and review my books. I personally believe, and I know I'm not alone in this, that the market for book reviews is inundated with 5-star reviews that are oftentimes not warranted. So my rating system was created for me specifically to make sure that I didn't have an abundance of 5-star rating books, because that should be reserved for books that really, really stick with you. So the way that I review my books is I have a number of categories that I rate individually. And once I rate those individual categories, I then add them all together and divide them by the number of categories I have, which at this point in time is 6. I have Notion up on my phone here because I wrote down notes on these 6 categories that I rate on, and they are plot, characters, dialogue, writing, conclusion, and enjoyment. Plot is pretty self-explanatory. That's whether or not I thought the plot was both well done and interesting. If there are a lot of holes at the end of the book and it is a single standalone novel, obviously the plot rating is going to tank. If the plot is absolutely incredible, or if it's a series, the rating might be a little bit more middle of the road or high end, depending on which of those two things is true. Characters for me was a really, really important category to have because I love character-driven novels. Of course I love plot as well, but I really adore books that have really, really well fleshed out and well-written characters. So when a book doesn't have good characters, for me personally, that is obviously going to tank the overall rating of the book that I'm reading. If I'm not enjoying the characters, more often than not, I'm not enjoying the book. Dialogue is also a really important one for me personally. I think that if a book has terrible dialogue, it is hard to get into. It's hard to read a book where when every time a character is talking, you roll your eyes or you have to stop and kind of shake your head. Good dialogue is essential for me in the books that I read. I know that some people are okay with middle of the road dialogue, but I tend to be really, really, really picky about the dialogue in my books. So that's why I put it as a category for rating. The next category is writing, and this is pretty self-explanatory. Is the book well written? Does it make sense when sentences are structured the way that they are? Are sentences structured well? Are there small mistakes grammatically here and there that draw attention away from what is being read and onto the actual technical side of the book that kind of pulls you away from what you're reading? Really self-explanatory on this one. Is the book well written? And I guess well edited on that end as well. The next one is conclusion, and this is essentially how well was the book resolved. This does tie in a little bit to the point on plot, but I think it can stand alone, especially because I read a lot of series, and an individual conclusion to a book in a series can be really, really good, and then the third book in a trilogy, the conclusion could be really, really bad, but that doesn't mean that the second book's ending wasn't good, which is why I have a conclusion category as well. This is just, did I like the way the book ended? Did I feel like it made sense for the way that the book was going? And if it is part of a series, does it leave enough that the book that you just read was satisfying, but also enough to make the next book interesting to read? That's also important. And my last category is enjoyment, and this is completely outside of absolutely everything else. A book can be poorly written with okay characters and a decent plot, but you can still have fun reading that book. Enjoyment is its own beast entirely. This is outside of any other rating, outside of any other category that I have already reviewed. It's just, did I have a good time reading this book? One of the easiest ways to tell if you enjoyed a book is how fast you were able to read it, and if you were able to read it consistently without being interrupted by everything around you. When you get lost in a book, even if there are other parts of the book that you don't really like, you can still confidently say that you enjoyed that book because you were able to get lost in it and not really think about anything else while you were reading it. So I have the enjoyment category because, like I said, sometimes a book can be bad, but you still have a lot of fun reading it, and that deserves to factor into the total star rating in my opinion. But that is my rating system for my books. As I said, I rate each category individually, add them all together, and then divide them by 6, and that is the overall book rating that I give. I will have a little disclaimer here and say that if I truly feel like that does not accurately reflect my feelings on the book, I will adjust the book rating higher or lower based on how I feel. In most cases, this is rating a book lower than what the average was, not higher. And I also do not do any other ratings except for 0.0 and 0.5 and always round it down. So for instance, if I have a book that is a 3.8, to me that means it wasn't good enough to be a 4, so I am not going to round that book up. Instead, I'm going to rate it as a 3.5. And as always, if you enjoyed, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you are interested in seeing more bookish content from me. And until next time, peace out guys and happy reading.